undesired. So welcome if you're seeing this video. We're picking up on the behavior matrix for the home. So this is an example of what a matrix would look like in the home for, this is the Johnson family. So you can see there's be respectful, be responsible, and be safe on the left-hand column. And then for the Johnson family, they picked the most problematic areas or routines. So for them, mealtime, use of the basement, playing in the yard, and then bedtime routine. And then for each of these family values, they defined what it would look like for their family. So for example, mealtime, be respectful would look like saying please and thank you and excuse me, asking and sharing about your day. Being responsible, helping to set the table or preparing meals, trying new foods and cleaning up together, and being safe, washing hands and keeping your chair on 4 legs. And then the adult role during the mealtime would be to announce the mealtime in advance to give people a chance to transition and to assign who's going to be responsible for what chore. And you can see it's the same for each of these 4 areas. So I talked to a parent today that had created one of these for her home and it looks great. And she put it on the wall and it helped a little, but obviously it's not a magic bullet. So the next step for that family is now to use it, teach it, reinforce when you get it right, have a consequence when you don't. So it is kind of like, and I think I have it here. Let me go on to the next one. There we go. So I showed this last week. This is a stew pot. So your family values and the expectations are like the matrix. That's like the pot. And without that framework, you just kind of have a mess. Okay. What goes in the pot is everything we do to teach and remind and reward positive behavior. So that's the meat and potatoes. The pepper grinder is the consequences or the punishments. But the pot is kind of what holds it all together. But you can't just have a pot and magically expect stew to be created. So that's the point of the strategies that we'll have in following sessions, is now that you have the framework, now what do we do to teach, prompt, promote, reinforce, and give consequences for actually meeting those expectations. So now we'll get into the topic for today, which is schedules and routines. So a lot of time people use these terms interchangeably, but for our purposes, we're going to make an important distinction. So when we say schedule, we're referring to the big picture or the overarching activities that need to be completed in a day. Routines refer to the steps needed to complete each of the activities. So why are schedules important? So schedules provide our mind and body with predictability and consistency. It helps create a feeling of safety. It provides the structure to ensure that our needs and other needs are being met physically, socially, cognitively, emotionally, everything. And obviously for most families, this current situation more than ever is shifting all of that around. All the normal timeframes and routines and things are all out of whack. And so now more than ever, schedules are really critical to keep things moving smoothly, but also to keep everybody feeling as okay as possible. So I'm going to read this directly from the slide because it's a good example. You can probably recall a past experience where such a long vacation or summertime when at some point you found yourself saying, we all just need to get back into a routine. Usually when we're out of a routine, we miss meeting some such needs as physical needs through exercise or working our brains cognitively. When our needs are met or not met, you may experience feelings such as anxiety, frustration, or depression. I'm meeting with a lot of parents, and a lot of them are reporting even the kids that haven't had anxiety, depression, worry, frustration are exhibiting that at various levels, even the kids that normally are just fine. And part of that is because of this disruption in our routines and our schedules. So other families may be on the opposite side where their schedules are becoming increasingly hectic as you try to squeeze more in. So for an example, if you're an essential worker without childcare and you're working longer hours or trying to work from home while still being a teacher and a parent and all that, or you're a single parent trying to work from home and also watching the little ones, but helping the school age kids be online. I mean, it's too much for anyone. And no matter what the situation, there is a disruption in our normal schedule. So without a schedule, we can expect undesired behaviors in both us and in kids. So that's what today's about. So just quickly, as we have to talk about brain regulation a little bit, this isn't normally my area. I'm the behaviorist, so I talk about environmental supports. That's kind of like the lane that I usually drive in. But there's a lot of research, and there's some more links at the end if you want to learn more about it. But the way our brain, I'm going to read this right from here, the way our brain develops and functions actually has a lot to do with the need for a schedule and why undesired behaviors rise when we are not following a schedule. In simple terms, our brains have an upstairs and a downstairs brain. The upstairs of our brain controls our thinking, problem solving, and ability to connect with others, while the downstairs brain controls the primitive or automatic behaviors such as breathing. When our needs are being met, brains are regulated and we are able to function in our upstairs brain. When our needs are not being met, for example, when we're hungry or we haven't exercised or moved in a bit, we are likely to begin functioning out of a lower part of our brain. Neuroscientists refer to these times that we are operating out of our downstairs brain as being dysregulated, or as Dan Siegel refers to it, flipping your lid. And he's one of the links, excuse me, that I have at the end, and he talks in really plain English terms about how the brain works. And he calls it, when you go into your downstairs brain, he calls it flipping your lid. I'm sure we can all relate to times that we have flipped our lid. And if we think back on those times, we can most likely identify a need that was not met. Both child and adult brains develop in the same manner. So next, we're going to talk about some activities to include in your routine to also keep you regulated. So we're talking about schedules today, but it's also important to incorporate certain activities in your schedule because it helps keep you emotionally and physically regulated. All right. So what to include in schedules? Okay, a few considerations. So one is to mimic it as closely to school as you can. Okay. And you also so to maintain consistency and predictability, you want to make it as similar to school as possible. So for example, consider keeping the expectation for the morning routine as similar as possible, such as getting dressed, eating breakfast, brushing your teeth, etc. Then ask your child to start their school day. So there, like a couple of parents have mentioned, especially with older students, that they're either eating breakfast late and then logging into Zoom at the last minute, or they want to be in their pajamas while they're online doing their Zoom class, maybe with the camera off. And it's like all these kind of hazy expectations of exactly what is appropriate or not, even though it's not okay if we breeze in late to school and we don't wear our pajamas unless it's pajama day, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all things that you want to make the expectations and the schedules as similar as possible, and morning routine sets the tone for the entire day. The next consideration is you want to include routines that will help brain regulation. So again, keeping us in our upstairs brain. So that includes movement activities. It includes time to connect with the family. It includes fun activities, checking in, playing with each other. These are all really important, as is movement. The same way at school that kids don't sit there all day is with the younger kids. There's learning breaks where they get up and they dance or they move or they switch around. We have recess, we have things like that. It's important that we schedule that in so that we're not just sitting in front of a computer all day long. It does not keep us in our upstairs brain. So here's an example, both for elementary and secondary. I don't know how old your kids are, but you can see there's some similarities. And this one's from the Center on PBIS, for Parent Information and Resources. There's a consistency within the schedule, but it allows for adjustment and some variation. So you notice there aren't times on this. There's like chunks, and it has examples, but it's not so self-limiting that we get stuck on it, or if we have kids that get really upset if we make a little change. You want to be able to have a little flexibility as well. Sometimes you might need to establish time frames, because at school we do have a bell schedule. So maybe for the learning times and the Zoom lessons, you have exact times, but you want to make sure that you leave yourself a little leeway to adjust as needed. So this is one example of how to do that. So this was actually for like a little kid, but here, this is the person who did the slide said, this is an example from my own 4-year-old child. COVID-19 has left my family juggling 2 jobs with 2 children under 4 at our home. Our work calendars require multiple meetings for both my husband and I. Therefore, we knew our schedule would be changing daily, and at times needs to change as the day is happening. We created slips of paper with activities we knew a 4-year-old could be engaged in throughout the day. And then there's additional slips that aren't pictured. This allowed us to modify our schedule as needed, but still provides us with structure. And then there's also times where we might have 2 slips that would work during a time frame, and we can offer a choice. For example, we could say, do you want a virtual field trip on the computer, or do you want to do centers, which is playing alone with her dollhouse or kitchen? So again, this is a very specific example for younger kids, but you have to take what works for your family. The overarching thing is that we have some kind of a schedule and routine to give us consistency. So what routines are needed in your home? Every family has different needs, so you need to figure out what your family needs. So consider your typical day, list all of the routines you think you might need, get your family's input on this before you finalize your list, identify the steps for each routine, and then from there you create a schedule for when and how often each routine will occur. After you have each routine defined, it's helpful to post the steps in an area connected to the routine. So the parent that I met with today had created the overall matrix with like mealtime, bedtime, learning, like the different activities. And so today we talked about what she's now going to do is there's the overall one, but she's going to cut that matrix into pieces and post the mealtime one in the dining room and the morning routine one in the bathroom or whatever. So then you have, as a point of reference, the expectations and the behaviors in each one of the areas. All right, so here's this example again. So I'm going to go to this. So a few tips to increase the likelihood that this is going to be a good fit for you. So one is make it fit your family and your needs. Like don't just get a generic one offline or try to replicate it exactly of one you've seen. Make it fit your family and identify your family's routines, and especially focus on the ones that are causing the most difficulty. Like the parent I talked to today, it was like, which one do we focus on first? The remote learning stuff is the one that's causing the most difficulty for the 2 teenagers. So she's going to start with that. You want to make anything that you decide to work on not only fit your family, but start with the easiest first and do a piece at a time, because we all have so much on our plates. Give yourself grace. There are going to be days that the schedule goes perfectly, and there's probably going to be more often than not where it seems like nothing is going as planned. It happens. A schedule is not the magic bullet. So on a day like that, you can scrap it up to a bad day, or if it's a couple bad days in a row, maybe look at making some changes, but it's not going to be perfect. So just please give yourself a break. If in the moment the activity is not meeting the needs for yourself or your child, don't be afraid to scratch it and adjust. Pause learning and take a break to connect or whatever. We never want to be so rigid about our schedule that we're being bullheaded about, you know what, this just isn't going to happen right now. Let's take a break, go take a walk, and come back and try it again. Ideas for movement activities. We can go outside a little more than we used to, as long as the air is clear. But there's some examples of, you know, breathing, yoga, swinging, music, ice skating on paper plates. I never thought of that. I guess if you have hardwood floors, that could work. I added Go Noodle on here. This is still a screen time thing, but a lot of elementary teachers use it. It's got like songs and that kind of stuff, because there's plenty of, for the younger kids, dance along music and songs to help get them up and moving. So we can't just expect them to be like sitting for 2 hours. So these are just ideas of how to get people up and moving. Anything that has rhythmic or repetitive movement can help promote brain regulation. So anything. And then there's the other thing, connection. Like I said at the beginning, when all else fails over any strategy or any Zoom session or anything, choose connection with your family. So make sure that you have it in your schedule and routine to be affectionate, if that works for your family, to have games, to tell stories, to have conversations, conversation starters at dinner for older students, or reading a book together. But we need to have that family time too carved out. So keys to success, this is something I always come back to, whatever we're working on, and this is a slide I'll have each week. When you decide that your kid is not engaging in the behavior that you want, be really clear about, we all get caught up in what we don't want. Stop this, don't do this. Be really clear about what is it that you do want, and then you name it and you teach it and you recognize it and acknowledge it when it happens. And we're patient when we're trying to roll out things to change behavior. I would love it if it was like a magic wand and it happened instantly, but a lot of the behavioral strategies we'll be using are ones that it's kind of like a soft rollout, where it sets the framework and you start it, but you don't get instantaneous change overnight. So know that going into it. A couple of other resources. So I've showed this web page right here, and I'm going to navigate that to in a minute. That was emailed out to all parents. It should be in the invite for today, and if you don't have it, you can email me directly and I'll send it to you. But it's a living, breathing web page that I created that has resources for parents, including the slides from today. Actually, here, let me show you the next slide, and then I'll navigate over to the website to just show you guys that. So you have a point of reference. I added this column yesterday when I talked about the brain regulation and Dr. Dan Siegel. It's under the column, how to stop yelling at your kids. And he talks about something he calls name it to tame it. And he talks about the upstairs brain and downstairs brain in very like plain English, user-friendly terms. So I'm actually going to escape out here. And let's go over there real quick and show it to you. I'm going to move you guys up here. All right. There we go. So this is, can everyone see the green? Is that what you're seeing? Are you seeing the green web page?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, just to make sure. I've learned to check now because sometimes I'm projecting what I don't think I'm projecting. So this is a web page helping to keep your children engaged in distance learning. The way that it's organized is you can scroll right or left, and in each of the columns you can scroll up and down, and it's basically videos, templates, examples, all kinds of things to kind of help you get going on some of the things we'll be talking about each week. So what we talked about today, how to set up routines and schedules and how it affects brain regulation, is in this first column. It's step number 1. Step number 2 is setting home expectations. We talked about that last week. That's how to create a matrix like this for your home. There's a school example and a home example. I'm going to navigate over here to quick tips materials. This is where I'll be posting the slides. I have last week's slides and I'll be posting today's slides. And then finally, this last column has the information from Dan Siegel and some videos on name it to tame it, or brain regulation. And the rest of these columns, I'll be picking strategies and bits and pieces. We'll be here every Monday at 2:45, but that is, yeah, that's about good. So we have about 10 minutes left. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you two to get feedback or ask questions, or if you want me to navigate on any of these that you're seeing. But at this point, the last 10 minutes is yours. You can ask me anything.
Okay, I think I'm good. You know, that's a great summary, and I'm gonna go to the website and start checking that out. So I don't have any specific questions at this point, so I need to put some of this to use.
Okay. We also, I will show, so one thing here, this is something that's gone out as well. I call it office hours. And so basically, this is a flyer that everybody should have gotten, but you can click here and sign up for like a 30-minute consult with me. So that's another option. I'll make sure that this is in the calendar invite as well. But you complete a form and request a time, and then I'll send you an invite for a 30-minute slot. And then we could, like, let's say you need help doing a schedule or doing a reinforcement system, or you just want to talk about what's going on in your house. We could do a 30-minute visit, and those I've met with about 20 parents so far, and so far it's been pretty good. If it's behavior stuff, I can help with it. If it's mental health stuff or things that aren't in my lane, I can get you in touch with like the appropriate person. And then I also have here, the flyer here is on these sessions, and like I said, as long as at least one person comes every Monday, I'm going to do this for the duration of our distance learning, and maybe beyond if parents want more of it. So I'll make sure that the link to this is in the website.